So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever you may be, all of you. Thanks so much for your presence. And today we are continuing with our series of lectures about Sri Raga-vartma-candrika, the moon ray which illuminates the path of Raga Bhakti, spontaneous, passionate, sacred devotion. So today we are in our third meeting, second week of studies. And today I plan to share with you some ideas regarding the fifth verse, or verse, prose, as you may like to call, of this first illumination, so first section. So today I think we will elaborate quite considerably, even more than previous lectures, even though we will see only one verse, because some things are to unpack. So I'm just telling you this in advance so you can bear with me. But of course, before going to the fifth verse, we will share some ideas regarding our previous lecture last week, where we were studying third and fourth verses of this first illumination of Raga-vartma-candrika. So the third verse, there Vishwanath was speaking about two kinds of devotions, basically Vaidhi and Raga Nuga Bhakti. He mentioned that, and he briefly mentioned some of its features. When Bhakti is caused by scriptural injunctions, it will be called Vaidhi, and when it's coming from spiritual greed, it's called Raga Nuga Bhakti. So that was the third verse. So we shared some ideas. Now we have started to unpack the ideas and the differences between Raga and Vaidhi, basically. Now we will continue today, we will continue next lecture, and so on. We need some time for this and to know the nuanced possibilities between them and so on. But basically, when we spoke about Vaidhi and scriptural injunctions, we, for example, gave some example of which type of injunctions. We quoted a verse from Bhagavad which spoke about, if you want to get free from miseries, from birth and death, you should sing, hear, engage in bhakti. And so those type of shastric injunctions has to do with the main motivation behind Vaidhi Bhakti. Also, we mentioned how Vaidhi Bhakti, officially, if you are belong to Vaidhi Bhakti Sampradaya, if you will, that will be connected with the ultimate goal of Vaikuntha, with the different types of mukti, sarupya, samipya, sarsti, sarupya. While on the other side, Raganuga Bhakti is that Bhakti which follows the Ragatmika Bhakti of the Braja Parisats, of the associate of Krishna and Braj, with Lobha, which greed. Because the Ragatmikas themselves are made of greed. So if you want to follow in their footsteps, some greed has to be there. That's the point, because they themselves are made and composed of greed itself. And of course, the goal, the path of Raga is connected to the goal of Braj. No, it's not taken to Vaikuntha in this case. And also, even we mentioned how we can find some sense of duty in Vrindavan, but from a very different perspective than that of Vaikuntha. Just sort of thinking, I must educate my son and must whatever. From the context of seeing Krishna and as her beloved son, friend, lover, and so on, very different orientation than in Vaikuntha Bhakti. So that's some ideas regarding the third verse. And in the fourth verse, Vishwanath, first he spoke about two kinds of devotion, and here he will speak about two kinds of basically devotees, or two kinds of practitioners, or two kinds of candidates or adhikars in this connection. Like correspondingly, there are two types of bhakti, so naturally there will be two types of adhikar for each one of them. So he mentioned in this fourth verse that to advance in bhakti will actually implies to nurture this exclusive, one-pointed desire to engage exclusively in the limbs, in the angas of bhakti, which that's an important point in itself to understand what does it mean to engage in bhakti. I want to engage in ananya bhakti, one-pointed focus without separate agenda bhakti. And this one I mentioned how one can progress in bhakti basically in two different ways according to what he already said. One of them will be out of fear, of the result of neglecting certain scriptural injunctions, and the second one with intense sacred greed. Again, we are repeating what was pounding the post, as we'll say. Vishwanath himself is doing this, so we can have this idea in a pretty crystal clear, like in our mind. So in this way, accordingly to this, there will be two candidates for Bhakti Sadhana, two types of adhikar or adhikaris, candidates with particular eligibility for that. So we explained this verse also, mentioning how actually Bhakti's Jaiva Dharma is quite universal in its nature for all, but at the same time, there are two ways that there can be there for one to join it, if you will, that are mentioned in this verse. Two candidates, adhikaris. You will have adhikar for Vaidhi, and we mentioned which is adhikar for Vaidhi, mainly caused by Shraddha. And the Shraddha will be connected to certain sections of the Shastra from certain approach. Now, all this is very specific, as we will see, and we are still unfolding that. An adhikar for Raga Bhakti will be caused because of Lova. We quoted this famous verse, Tatra laulem apyakalam mulyam, Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavithamati. Only one price, only one currency to pay if you want to obtain that Krishna Bhakti Rasa. The coins will be, the currency will be paid in Lova, laulem. So we also mentioned, just almost closing our previous lecture, how Shraddha, faith or initial faith, and Ruchi, the type of taste, will be present in different degrees and in different forms of proportions, if you will, in these two paths, if you will. In both cases, there will be, we will go from Shraddha to Prem, as Rupa Goswami established, from Shraddha to Prem. That applies to Bhakti, that applies to Rag. But there will be different levels of prominence of these elements. Because again, all these stages are the same for both. Vaidhi and Raga, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhadana, Kriyanartha, Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Shakti, Asakti, Bhava, Prem. But again, there's particular prominence. So we say in Vaidhi, Shraddha in particular direction will be there from the beginning. Some Ruchi will come, but that Shraddha will be main feature. And in the case of Raga, some Ruchi will come from the beginning, and Shraddha will be there as a secondary aspect. But again, we have to continue unfolding this idea, and we will do it today, hopefully. But briefly, we mentioned this idea. In both of them, we will find these 9 stages. In Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, we will find mostly all of the 64 limbs of Bhakti mentioned by Rupa Goswami, with certain exceptions that we will also mention eventually. But the point is that this criteria is also not black and white. Okay, you are a Vaidhi Bhakta, you are a Raga Bhakta, because I think whenever we hear this description, we'll feel I kind of do not fully fit with one nor the other, where I am standing in the universe of Bhakti. So today we will try to examine these nuanced shades of gray and the interaction between these two elements of Vaidhi and Rag. And of course, unpack the idea of, as I mentioned in previous class, of Ajata, Ruchi, Raganuga, Sadhana, Bhakti, and so on. So we will that in the context of explaining the 5th verse of Raga-vartma-candrika, which will be the one we will be saying today. So again, it's not a verse, strictly speaking, it's prose, it's not a slok. So I will go straight reading the English translation of the original Sanskrit. So we will see over and over again here, Vishwanath will be quoting, referring to Rupa Goswami over and over again, and specifically to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, since this Raga-vartma-candrika is based on such a work. So he begins the 5th verse doing that. He says, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami has described the symptoms of the appearance of sacred greed as follows. So he quotes, when the heart yearns for the sweetness of the mutual feelings of Sri Krishna and his eternal associates in Braj, and one is not dependent on scriptural injunctions or logical arguments, this is said to be the symptom of the appearance of sacred greed. If, now Vishwanath continues his explanation, if upon hearing of the sweetness of the feeling of amorous love and other moods of Sri Krishna's associates in the Braja Lila, one thinks, let me also attain such feelings, then at this time one need not depend either on the revealed scriptures or on favorable logical considerations. If such scriptural impetus persists, it cannot be said that sacred greed has appeared. No one ever develops this sacred greed on the basis of the scriptural injunctions, nor is there any consideration of spiritual qualification or lack thereof for obtaining it. Rather, greed arises spontaneously simply upon hearing about or seeing the object of one's longing. So this is fifth verse, which will speak, its main topic will be eligibility for Raganuga Bhakti, as you can realize. Just in case you are interested regarding having the verse in front of your eyes, I will copy here. Let's see. Oh, it's not allowing me to copy that. Maybe it's too long of a text. Let's see. Now it seems is the first part, and I'm putting the second one. Yeah. So there's the two sections of the verse for you to have it there. So of course, as you have heard, and you may be wondering, this verse requires an explanation, because again, it's defining Raga Bhakti and mentioning that whenever your heart is yearning for the sweetness of such feelings, you are ready for Raga Bhakti, basically. And when you are not dependent on Shastra, Yukti, on logic and scripture, that's a symptom of the appearance of this lobha, of this greed that qualifies you for Raga Bhakti. So we may start to wonder, so what does it mean? No? This regard for scripture, not depending on that. So we'll try to make all this clear, hopefully, today and next classes. So in this way, Vishwanath is trying to make this point. If you heard about Braja Lila, of course, from a particular mouth, from the lips of particular people, that will create a particular impact that you will think, I would like to attain that on some level or another. So, and the point is, if in spite of this, scriptural impetus is still there, so we cannot yet speak of Rag. So of course, we will see. And this is connected to, I remember the question that also Brigitte had made last class. Now, are we starting just with full lobha from day one, from the very beginning of Raga Bhakti? Or when Vishwanath is describing Raga Bhakti here, is speaking about Raga Bhakti proper, or the Raga Bhakti that appeared from day one, or full Raga Bhakti appeared from day one? And in that case, where I am standing, because I may not feel I have full lobha yet. And so all the things need to be accommodated. So let's enter into a nuanced interpretation of all this that is totally necessary for to make a realistic and sustainable understanding of what's Raga Bhakti and how to engage in that in our particular case, or in any particular case for that matter. So the point again, here it may seem like everything is happening in a very sudden way. You go, you hear Braja Lila Katha, for a moment you feel, I want to attain that. Immediately you became independent of all scripture, and you are threading the Raga mark. It seems like immediate. So sometimes the Acharyas have spoken in that way, but the point is that there is some gradual process in between of all this. So here, what the very verse means that when we acquire some level of experience through hearing this Bhagavad Katha, these stories from Braj, and from other Lila Granthas, of course, Bhagavad will be always mentioned like the crown Grantha Raj, crown scripture, but we have so many other Lila Granthas that go in detail with this, about the moods of service of the Nitya Parishats. So when you acquire some level of experience here in this, Ananta Das Pandit makes that point also in his commentary, he's not saying immediately you have that. When you acquire some level of experience, then you become independent from scriptural injunctions and logical arguments, and develop certain desire for this sweetness, these sweet feelings. It's not happening all at once. You have to acquire some experience, you have to gain some insight in order to gradually make your own taste, your own guidance or shastra, if you will. Now we will continue explaining this in detail. But that's the very thing that will prompt the Raga-nuga bhajan. And of course, on the other side, to create the contrast, when you are not depending, when you are depending, still depending on scriptural injunctions, but when this is said, it means on certain scriptural injunctions, like the ones we already mentioned in connection to Vaidhi Bhakti, not regarding Lila Granthas in this case, but this scriptural injunction, if you do this, this will happen, so better you should always remember this if you want to be free from. That's the point when we are speaking here about scriptural injunctions. So you are still depending on that or on logical arguments of some type in this connection. Still, at that point, we cannot yet speak of greed, because no one will become greedy through that type of scriptural knowledge. That's the point. But we will see how we need certain scriptural knowledge to nourish our sacred greed. So here, when we say scripture, we are referring to specific sections, specific statements, and so on. So the conclusion here basically is that when you see or when you hear about your desired object, in this case, the love, some particular type of love in exchange in Vrindavan, greed will automatically awaken, and there will be no consideration whatsoever of being qualified or not for attaining that desired object. Because greed is greed. I mean, if you really understand what's greed, and we will also, again, unpack that idea today, but greed means greed. I'm not thinking if I is qualified or not for that. I'm greedy for that. That speaks for itself, if you will. So that's an important point that is mentioned here also. There's no consideration of qualification or lack of qualification. So that's also will need to be unpacked. So this will be some of the main points we will try to mention today, to explain today. So my point is, when we hear this description about Raga-nuga Bhakti, we may consider many things. If we do not get the full idea of this, we may feel ourselves discouraged, because we may consider, I don't have the greed, the qualification for such a thing, the law is described here, or we may feel overwhelmed about, I don't know if it's possible to develop such qualification, maybe with some admixture of Vaidhi in my rag, but it's possible to do that, and how to do that in such a case. And again, these things won't be explained in detail in the Raga-vartma-candrika, but I will try to unfold that because it's necessary at this point to make that clear. We'll take some time for that. So my point is that if for sure, every person that at least in some detail, some level, we know the delicate ingredients of Raga-nuga sadhana, very easily will feel that you will conclude very quickly, very naturally, that you cannot just embrace the practice fully from one day to the other. I mean, if you have a glimpse of what's Raga-nuga sadhana about, you will realize this cannot be accomplished in a weekend, in a japa retreat, or in a seminar with Swami Pavanava or whatever. But at the same time, if we just engage in devotional culture in the context of the Vaidhi mark, we cannot expect some sudden like transportation, like we will be moved from the Vaidhi mark to the Raga mark like magically, just being focused in one mark and suddenly finding ourselves in the other path. Because for that to happen, my point is, for that to happen, certain elements should be there nurturing our affinity to our desired object, in this case, Raga Bhakti. So the question may come again, should we reject totally all rules and regulations and ritual that are so prominent in Vaidhi mark? Or in case we should not, in case we should keep them or maintain them, till which degree, to which point to do that, how to do that, in such a way that eventually such a practice will make us more and more inclined towards the path of spontaneous devotion. How to properly combine this, if that's possible. Of course, that will be possible, so don't panic. So our acharyas are giving this advice, trying to establish some middle point to the situation of most of the sadhakas, and as a way of giving sustainability to our ideal. So the idea is to know how to properly combine these two paths somehow or other. It's a very particular and generous mixture in proper doses, how to combine the two of them according to our present situation, which will be different, of course, in every single individual. So this particular approach or stance, very generous one, had been coined, if you will, by Srila Jiva Goswami as Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, which seems an oxymoron to say Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti, because Raga means with some taste, if you will. And Ajata Ruchi, Ajata means unborn, not born yet, and Ruchi means taste. So that practice of passionate devotion which has no taste yet. So it may seem like a self-contradicting term, but actually it's a very flexible and generous possibility that is coming to us through our Tattvacharya Srila Jiva Goswami. So let me share with you the Jiva Goswami's words from Bhakti Sandarbha. This is Anucheda 311. So he's describing here Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, which will be our mostly main topic for today. So he says, one in whom this taste, no? Ruchi, that's the point, Ruchi, has not arisen, but who has come to appreciate Raganuga Bhakti only on account of appreciation for a particular saint or scripture, that person may still practice Raganuga Bhakti, but with an admixture of Vaidhi Bhakti. In the same way, for the sake of preaching, what we may call Lokavichar, one who is advanced and in whom taste has manifested should also practice Raganuga with an admixture of Vaidhi, to give an example to the masses. Such mixing of the two kinds of bhakti means that one practices Vaidhi Bhakti by uniting it with whatever Raganuga practices one is capable of. So that's the definition that Srila Jiva Goswami is giving of Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Approaching to those sadhakas who have not yet reached the stage of Ruchi proper, Jata Ruchi Raga Bhakti, but they are Ajata Ruchi, with no Ruchi yet, but they have some appreciation for Raga Bhakti. So just to have an appreciation of the path already puts you on the map of Raga Bhakti, if you will, by contact with some particular sadhu or shastra, heard by sadhu, whatever. Or even to the point of, even if you have that ruchi, still most probably you will follow some Vaidhi in order to give the example to those other practitioners who still do not have that ruchi yet. So gradually you will embrace this structure of Vaidhi, if you will, and gradually you are incorporating as much Raganuga practice as you are capable of. We will delve into detail about which are these main practices in following verses. So basically, this is the recap of this verse, not for both for one's own necessity or for the other's necessity. This mixed, if you will, practice will be there in most of the cases. Whatever you need that, or whatever others need to see your example of that. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami used similar terminology in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. Instead of saying Jata and Ajata Ruchi, he said Jata and Ajata Rati, which may be different in the sense that Ruchi, in the case of Jiva Goswami, refers to the stage of Ruchi, which is advanced sadhana bhakti, and Rati will refer to Bhava Bhakti. So Krishnadas may have established a different standard, if you will, but in either case, my point is we have two types of Raganuga Bhaktas here, Jata and Ajata. So this consideration and flexibility is there for whatever definition you may like to take. So, of course, Raganuga sadhana is a big subject, and we are just here trying to touch its main points and have a glimpse of that to nurture our practice. And also, it's a big subject which is explained in many different ways by different lineages, which will have different levels of approach to it. Let's call more orthodox or more liberal or conservative. So we as members of the Bhakti Not Parivar, we tend to take a more conservative conservative approach in comparison to others. Not also an extremely conservative approach, because if not, we wouldn't be speaking about this now. But in comparison to certain other lineages, our stance in this connection, as we will see as the classes unfold, it's a little bit more conservative in comparison. So what we will try to do, what we will follow today, is a description of such an approach that is mainly characterizing our Bhaktivinoda Parivar. So how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the father, if you will, of our Bhaktivinoda Parivar, conceived this idea of Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana. Actually, the concept of Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana is called Vaidhi Bhakti by many of our acharyas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur chose to have this stance. He was among the first, basically, to use the term Vaidhi Bhakti in place or as a synonymous to Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Bhakti. When he was speaking about Vaidhi Bhakti, he was not advocating that one should engage in Vaidhi Bhakti and attain Vaikuntha eventually. He was not establishing, but understanding Vaidhi Bhakti in that way. He was not saying, okay, practice Vaidhi Bhakti to Vaikuntha and from there gain some eligibility for the Raganuga Sadhana and go from Vaikuntha to Braj. Who knows, some devotees had some strange ideas like that. No, his position was Vaidhi Bhakti means Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti. And the position that his son and follower Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada too also followed Bhaktivinoda's usage of the term, and Jiva Goswami's conception, of course, of the term. So for Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta was the same idea. An Ajata Ruchi Sadhaka, Raganuga Sadhaka, he should adopt whatever methods of Raganuga Bhajan that they are qualified to adopt in proportion to their development of this Lobha or sacred greed, sometimes called Lobhamaya Shraddha, some faith, but which is mainly imbued, as we say, mainly predominated by this greed. While, Bhaktisiddhanta will say, doing this while following the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti, which are established by Srila Rupa Goswami. In other words, the point here is that the idea is that Vaidhi is like how do you say in English? Like monitors the stage of Raga, the stage of our Raga, which is just gradually in full blooming. So Vaidhi is there to protect, to monitor Raga Bhakti. But again, we are not the Vaidhi Bhakti Sampradaya. So in our Raga Bhakti Sampradaya, the rules of Vaidhi will change slightly in what we may call emotional content, because our prospect is different. So externally, the Vaidhi Bhakta from the Sri Sampradaya, let's say, if you will, or Raga Bhakta may be following certain similar practice externally, but the internal emotional content will be different. So in this way, the relation, at least for us, in this conception of Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, the relation between Vaidhi and Rag, which we may call also, Guru Maharaj may call it the path of ritual and the path of love. It's like the relationship between the body and medicine. Sometimes that example is given as well. Raga has many functions, but the function of Vidhi or Vaidhi will be protect, will be nurture, monitor, as I said, Rag. So when the Rag has been fully nurtured, it no longer depends on Vidhi. Similar like the analogy of the body and medicine. When you are fully healthy, medicine is no longer necessary. You already are healthy. You already have the medicine there, properly included, if you will. Health is with you. So, as we mentioned, even some slight appreciation of the idea of Raga Bhakti already puts on there. So some prevailing interest in this idea of Braja Prem, of course, resulting from Sadhu Sangha, is not some inborn automatic thing. Already to have that slight connection puts on the map of Raga Bhakti, Raganuga Sadhana. And there we'll seek the blessing for further eligibility. That's the point. And as we know, our orientation in the practice will be derived from the Sangha we have, from the association we will be blessed with, be it Raga or be it Vaidhi. And it has to do, when one's orientation And one's ideal is the thing, it's what will determine our path, basically. According to where I want to go, there will be a particular way to get there. So in that particular Sangha that we have been blessed, we will be drawing a particular feeling, as you know, for Krishna, and will be eventually getting attracted and attached to particular leelas, guna, rupa, qualities, etc., that will correspond with that particular sentiment. Also, we can explain this verse from another perspective. This is like the more basic and general idea in the context of jata, anajata, ruchi, raga, bhakti. Also, we could say another thing. What does it mean to fully tread the raga mark? As we will see in following verses, which are the implications of being a full-fledged, if you will, member or practitioner of raga mark. That will require doing so in two bodies. Siva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena, tatrahe will say, eventually Rupa Goswami. Vishwanath will quote that verse. To fully practice raga bhakti, full-fledged raga bhakti will require two bodies, sadhaka deha and siddha deha. Sadhaka rupa, siddha rupa. So in the beginning, the point in connection to what we are speaking in the beginning, we can start this mark, this path, with the sadhaka deha that we receive from Sri Guru in the moment of initiation. Jiva Goswami is explaining also. So before you start to serve in meditation in your siddha deha, before you go deep into lila shmara and some other esoteric practices connected to also the raga mark, which require further adhikar. Actually, it's not just like you sit and you are there immersed in the lila. It's required there are certain cleansing, if you will, of the path. So we will get there gradually, and one does so by gradually adhering to the Shravan and Kirtan, which is prescribed as an anga of Vaidhi Bhakti, but with the aspiration to eventually attain such a Siddha Swarup, to attain further adhikar, full eligibility to tread the raga mark. So this is, then again, what we find here is a mixture of raga and Vaidhi sadhana, but with the aim of attaining further eligibility for pure, if you will, full-fledged Raganuga sadhana that will be at that point exclusively driven by ruchi. That's what it means, jata ruchi, raga bhakti. Ruchi awakes, taste proper awakes, that will be the main driving force. We won't need some other impetus, if you will. So the idea with all this is that the siddha deha will arise out of our fully engaged, Guru Maharaj will say, sadhaka deha. You want to see the deha? Okay, you have a sadhaka deha. Do the needful with that, and eventually the other thing will appear. He will say, Guru Maharaj, over and over again this point. Many want to see the deha nowadays, but they are not taking the trouble of fully engaging their sadhaka deha. They do not get this point that a fully engaged properly sadhaka deha naturally will beget siddha swarup. So where does this idea of lobha, again, this verse is speaking about lobha from the very beginning as a driving force for raga bhakti. So where does this lobha mentioned here fit in this beginning stage of raga bhakti? So again, in the lowest sense, the term will constitute a desire to follow the paths of Raj, as Sri Goswami said, to appreciate the ideal. That sounds quite passive yet, but again, that's something that already puts on the map of Raga Bhakti. You appreciate the ideal. So eventually that will become a further systematical culture, but eventually there's some initial appreciation of that. Eventually some desire, yeah, I have that prospect. As opposed to the majestic love of Vaikuntha, Aishvarya Bhava. So this will set us on the path. But again, we are not totally already immersed there, because just to have a slight appreciation of it, yes, that's setting us on the path of Raga Bhakti, in as much as the path differs from from Vaidhi Bhakti in terms of orientation, in terms of subsequent ideal, in that connection. But again, this initial rudimentary lobha in of itself, thus it's not turning ourselves into full-fledged Jata Ruchi Raganuga Bhaktas. We are not yet there. So that's something. First will come again, Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana. We'll have to go through that stage. And even if we would like to continue in this, like, if we will, conservative lines, we have Mukunda Goswami, a famous commentator on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and he mentions in his commentary, he mentions that lova for Raganuga Bhakti is more rare than the bhava of Vaidhi Bhakti, which Rupa Goswami already describes it as sudurlabha, very rare. So the point is, full-fledged lova and Raga Bhakti is not such a cheap substance. It's even more extraordinary than the bhava, which is a higher stage in Vaidhi Bhakti. So to understand that this requires certain churning, if you will, certain engagement. So the point is that a neophyte, beginner Raga Bhakta, may maybe have appreciating the ideal and worshipping Radha Krishna, but still there will be some admixture of, for example, Aishvarya Gyan. As we say the other day, and Prabhupada will say, you are worshipping Radha Krishna, but actually you're worshipping Lakshmi Narayan. He wanted to make a point. He wanted to say, you are worshipping Radha Krishna, but in a rudimentary way. There may be more prominence yet of Vaidhi, of Aishvarya, or certain elements, but under the guidance of someone like Prabhupada, you eventually end worshipping full-fledged Radha Krishna, if you will, conception. So in the beginning, and neophyte Raga Bhakta may be worshipping Radha Krishna with some Aishvarya Gyan. They are God, they are the divine, supreme personality of Godhead, and that's required. Again, this is not something bad in itself. We need to establish, as we say, Krishna is God in order to forget that someday and see him with other lens. So in those cases, if your worship of Radha Krishna is tinged with some Aishvarya Gyan, well, we could say, strictly speaking, our bhakti is not yet Jnana Anabritam, as Rupa Goswami will have defined when he mentioned what's Uttam Bhakti about. It should be Jnana Anabritam, not covert, but Gyan. But Gyan means, one of the points is Krishna is God. So that's a type of Gyan, if you will, a type of opulence, of Aishwarya. And for that matter, maybe in the beginning, the bhakti of a Raga Bhakta may be not even free from karma. Maybe karma, not be karma navritam, uncovered from fruitive expectations or whatever. And in one sense, it's free from karma and jnana, but only in the sense that the ideal they have, uttam bhakti, the ideal is free from these coverings. Yeah, the ideal they accepted in their school of thought is free. But in reality, the devotee in her practice is not yet free from karma and jnana. She will be engaged in Sudha Bhakti. Yes, they are engaged in Sudha Bhakti in terms of sadhana bhakti, but that devotee in itself, in himself, herself, is not yet a Sudha Bhakta in all respects. We need to understand these conceptions. We may be threading the path of pure bhakti. It doesn't mean we are pure bhakta yet. In potential, we are. The conception we receive in our school of thought is totally devoid of all diluted conceptions. But in our present situation, we may not be yet there. But we have big hope because we have the shelter and guidance of those who are there. So that's the whole point, of course. We have to always conclude with this hope at the end of the story. So Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana is the normal course for all the Raga Bhaktas, basically, in the beginning. You have to start with this Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Bhakti, at least most of the cases. It's not that most of the devotees do not need to combine Vaidhi and will only advance through the force of love from day one. No, that won't be the case. That may be an exceptional case, exception to the rule, and so on. And as we will see eventually in further verses, this is explained regarding if you are already practicing this from previous lifetimes and so on. That will be next class. So in the same way that you are not starting with full love in Raga Bhakti, at the same time, if you are threading the Vaidhi mark, you are not starting either with full Shraddha. interestingly, because we explain, no? The very beginning of Raga Bhakti is Loba, the very beginning of Shraddha, of Vaidhi Bhakti, sorry, is Shraddha. But strictly speaking, extra officially, before that Shraddha or before that initial Loba, there was a particular type of sadhu sangha which took each practitioner to an introductory level of Shraddha, introductory level of Shloba, of appreciating the idea. So this initial Lobha that comes in the beginning of Raga Bhakti, Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti, is compared to a flower sometimes. No? The flower is blossoming in a very gradual way. Won't be fully blossoming immediately. It's a whole process. But again, as we mentioned, I think previous class, if we keep ourselves hearing about this Ragatmika Brajavasis, about those people who are made of attachment for Krishna, and we are hearing about their attachment from the mouths, from the lips of those who already have that attachment, even though I may not understand too much from day one, all that will creating already some samskar. It's a powerful experience. We are hearing about Ragatmikas from the mouths of Raganugas, if you will. No? We are hearing about those who are made of attachment from the mouths of those who have attachment. So that creates in us some attachment, at least some appreciation for the ideal. Again, some initial samskar, some disposition in a particular sangha that will define my orientation, basically. That's how it works. So in this way, we can speak about a certain type of taste from the very beginning, certain type of taste. But again, Raga Bhakti proper, with all its letters, will start to manifest from on the stage of Ruchi. That's why Jiva Goswami makes this point. Ajata Ruchi, Anjata Ruchi. Like implying when Ruchi is coming, the stage after Nishta, Nishta Ruchi, Sakti Bhava, when Ruchi comes, there you will be labeled, if you will, as a Raga Bhakti, Raga Bhakta proper. But now we are work in progress. We're walking in that direction. Meanwhile, we should learn how to properly combine certain elements of Vaidhi that will nurture our goal of Rag. A famous example of this, we are speaking along the lines with what how Bhaktivinoda, how Bhaktisiddhanta conceived this idea of Raga Bhakti, if you will, more conservative terms. So example of that will be the logo of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur regarding his Gaudiya Mat. Let me share with you the file for the ones who do not know it. I think it's possible to share it here. I'm trying. It seems it was sent. You check if you would like to, if you don't know the logo, you can see it. I think I sent you via chat. So if you see this logo, there you have the image. It's very interesting because he very clearly established Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur this principle of Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti, and how to approach the most sublime ideal of Raja Bhakti, how to get there. Of course, we find there Sriman Mahaprabhu in the center because he's the Istadev of our Gaudiya Sampradaya, but on the left side of the logo, which represents Vaidhi Bhakti, we'll find different like items of Vaidhi Bhakti, like the Arctic paraphernalia, which implies Archana, which is a central practice in this path, Archana, as opposed to the idea of Bhajan, if you will. And we will find some little books there, which are different scriptures connected to the mood of Vaidhi Sadhana. And we'll find Lakshmi Narayan there, which is the ultimate deity in such a Vaidhi mark. And on the other side, on the right side of the logo, of course, we find the section dedicated to Raga Bhakti, and there we find Radha Krishna in Braj, scriptures such as the Bhagavat, which represents like the main scriptural source for the Raga Bhakta, Praman. And we find also Mridanga on a printing press. That's even much more astonishing. Maybe the whole thing is astonishing, but these last details, interestingly, all of them are connected as representative of an intense devotional absorption regarding this Raga Bhakti practice. So regarding this last point, which speaks about Mridanga and printing press, which is called the Brihad Mridanga, according to Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta. He would say you can hear Mridanga in the village, but the printing press can be heard along the world, by sharing the message, sharing the good tidings. So I would like to share some brief words regarding this last point, because it's a very interesting conception and approach to the idea of Raga Bhakti in conjunction with Vaidhi Bhakti, in the dynamics of what it means to be a member of the Bhakti Vinod Parivar. This is connected to a famous shloka, line, song that he composed, Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta. He ordered to be recited and chanted while the main deities were moved from their original place to the historical marble temple Bhagavasar Gaudiya Math in Calcutta. Pujala Raga-pata Gaurava Bange Matala Harijana Vishaya Rangi. Srila Sri Maharaj will say, this is Bhaktisiddhanta Bani, he will say in his verse. The real existence of Bhaktisiddhanta is here. Pujala Raga-pata Gaurava Bange. So the general meaning of this verse, which is very nice, says the devotees, the implication, the spirit of the verse is the devotees intoxicated by the kirtan of the holy name, which has the power to consume the entire world, worship the raga mark from a distance. Pujala raga pata gaurava. Gaurava means some reverential thing is there. This kirtan cleanses the heart of all charm for the world and bridges the gap between the worshipper and worshipped, such that the reverence for the deity is replaced by deep, intimate love for him. So that's how Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta conceived that mixture of Vaidhi with Raga in the context of his preaching campaign. Absorption of the senses, of all the faculties, in the disseminations of the message, trying to think about that, trying to see how to present that properly, how to give a proper example of that, and having proper respect for the raga mark. Interestingly, this is a nice point. Pujala raga pata gaurava bange. He used the word puja and gaurav, which sounds much more like Sri Sampradaya, like Aishwarya. So this verse is telling us that the devotees at this stage, who aspire to thread the raga mark proper, they should worship the raga mark with reverence. We should understand this expression. This is not the same as Vaidhi mark, reverential worship of Bhagavan. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta here is trying to invite us to worship the ideal of the raga mark itself, with proper concern and respect. Not to worship Bhagavan by Kunthabhav, but to worship the raga mark with proper respect, and to worship those devotees who are fully eligible to tread that path, who have attained that, what to speak, the Ragatmikas, who are made of that. Because only through those devotees is that we can receive the required kripa, so we can do the same. We will see that in next verses where Vishwanath makes it clear. Only by kripa you attain the chance of conceiving something like that. So by absorbing your faculties, in connecting this world with its source, gradually the love that you have for the world disappear from the heart and is replaced for another type of lova. That will be the idea of Bhaktisiddhanta. What does it mean, lova? First of all, you don't have lova for anything from this world. So that will happen as much as you properly engage all the elements of this world with its source. So as this charm is disappearing from the heart, the idea will be the distance, the reverence will be disappearing as well. The distance between the deity and the devotee is bridged, and you attain intimacy. You get closer to the ideal of Raj. You attain gradually eligibility to thread the raga mark further lova. So this is an important verse for us as members of the Bhakti Vinod Parivar. Guru Maharaj will say also very interestingly, in connection to this verse, he said that we should know that in connection to what the verse says, also the verse of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, while the initial pursuit of the raga mark does not require pure heart, we say there's no consideration of qualification or lack of qualification, he mentions the meditation that is central to this sadhana does require certain qualification to enter fully into Lila Smaranam and so on. So, and Kirtan, connecting to what Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta say, Kirtan, on the other hand, does not require pure heart, while Lila Smaranam does. So Bhaktisiddhanta addresses this point when he writes in his song, in another song of his, which is Vaishnavake, Kirtana Prabhava Smarana Svabhave. The power of Kirtan will bring about meditation of on one's own Swarup identity. So the idea is worship of the Raga mark, Pujala Ragapata, while concentrating on cleaning one's heart. He's talking about this in all these lines. He also will say sometimes, first deserve, then desire. He's mainly saying that. Of course, deserve doesn't mean I will acquire my own merit independently of grace or something like this, but try to surrender, try to clean your heart in a particular context, and eventually love proper will come and you can desire without the fear of desiring something which is unbecoming for the Raga mark. So the conclusion of this first section, we have a little bit to go yet, but the conclusion of this first section basically is that when spiritual greed becomes the impetus for following Vaidhi, that's no longer called Vaidhi Bhakti, but Raganuga Bhakti, or Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So, and after proper execution, that will take us closer and closer to Jata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Raga Bhakti proper. So the thing here is not so much you are following Vaidhi or not, you are following rules or not, but which is the impetus behind that. So now we will try to explore that further. So going for a moment back to the original verse that we are studying today from Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad, he's mentioning, let's speak a little bit about the role of Shastra in connection to Vaidhi and Rag, because here something it's being said. In the present verse, it is said that Raga Nuga Bhakti does not depend in Shastra and logic. So I think that already the first thing we have elucidated today is giving us a glimpse of what's the idea behind that. I also say something as an introduction, and now we will unpack a little bit more. So what does it mean that Raga Bhakti does not depend in Shastra, does not depend in logic? Yes, this is true in one sense, but we have to understand how this plays out. Because so in this connection, let's first analyze the role of Shastra in Vaidhi, and then let's analyze the roles of Shastra in Raga Bhakti. As we know, Vaidhi Bhakti is mainly characterized by a very clear alignment, you say, being aligned with the Shastric disposition. So that's why when Rupa Goswami describes, which is the adhikar for threading the Vaidhi mark, he speaks about that in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which are the levels of qualifications to be engaged in Bhakti. He will say that will mainly depend on level of Shraddha and knowledge of scripture. Because again, Vaidhi mark is so connected to what scripture is saying and to take certain type of Shraddha in this connection. But again, when Rupa Goswami is saying here, adhikar for Vaidhi depending on faith and knowledge of scripture is referring to certain type of faith, certain Shastra, certain focus according to the Sangha one has received. We are speaking in a particular context. So as much as I get acquainted with scriptural Shastric injunctions, I will have the potential to develop faith in those injunctions. That's the whole idea here in Vaidhi Bhakti. I mean, I will reinforce my faith by knowing what the revelation is saying, and I will develop faith in that. So all this will further qualify me more and more for this practice of Vaidhi Bhakti. There is some Shastriya Shraddha, of course, in Vaidhi Bhakti. Shastriya Shraddha means I have faith in what scripture is saying in the context of Bhakti, of Vaidhi here. Of course, we will see also Shastriya Shraddha in the context of Raga Bhakti, especially in the context of beginning Raga Bhakti, Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti. So we could then say that this Vaidhi Bhakti sadhana, which also is called Mariat Mark by the Vallabh Sampradaya in this case, like the sense, the path of rectitude. Rupa Goswami will quote Vallabh in this connection sometimes, 2 times in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So this Vaidhi Bhakti sadhana is mainly predominated by a great dependence of what Shastra is saying, in the context of being afraid, again, of the consequences of failing in our execution, and also with a very strong sense of duty and a very intense notion that he's God. No? Narayan is God by Kuntha. No? He's God. I'm aware of God's godhood, if you will. So it's not really to conclude that such a sadhana, such an engagement with such an orientation will naturally take us to a particular type of bhav and a particular type of prem. Because if you maintain yourself practicing in the context of Vaidhi sadhana, without at any point mixing that with Raga Bhakti, you won't end in Vrindavan, of course. The result of such a practice will converge in Vaikuntha. So we shouldn't, my point is also, we shouldn't commit the mistake of thinking, as I mentioned before, you start your practice with impure Vaidhi Bhakti, if you will, and at some moment of the practice, Vaidhi Bhakti suddenly transforms itself into Raganuga Bhakti. So you're changing the path, if you will. And at the end, you attain magically Golok Vrindavan or something. Sometimes they want to think like this. No, I'm chanting my 16 rounds, I'm following my 4 regulative principles, I'm doing my duties, basically. And at the end of my life, Vishnudutas will come and I will be transferred to Golok. And it doesn't work like that, basically. I mean, you need some, we need some Sambandha Gyan in between to really get there. So that's the point for us as Raga Bhaktas. If we are receiving such a chance, we should be aware of about the necessity of properly including the Ragam ingredient there. Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say very nicely, subjectively as well. He will say, like, the Vaishnava principles are so unlimitedly exalted that those who simply remain like entangled in the regulative process without making an effort to understand the science of attachment, such persons are compared to ordinary fruitive workers. So of course, here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is not criticizing a Sri Vaishnava who is dedicated to that, but a Gaudiya who is not going deeper into her own legacy, basically. So in this way, in the same way that you can remain practicing Vaidhi Bhakti from beginning to end, from day 1 to day 108, until you obtain the ultimate goal of Vaikuntha in the case of Vaidhi Bhakti, in the same way, one should practice Raga Bhakti from day 1 and remain practicing Raga Bhakti from day 1. But again, what does it mean to practice Raga Bhakti from day 1? To properly combine that with certain aspects of Vaidhi Bhakti in the beginning, as we already mentioned, till we arrive to our respective ultimate goal, which is not precisely Vaikuntha, but Mahavaikuntha, or Vaikunthavan, the forest inside Vaikuntha, Brajadam. Interestingly, in this context, Rupa Goswami has mentioned in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that if someone is only engaging in Vaidhi Bhakti, some particular examples he's giving here, but not officially following the Sri Sampradaya, that person is worshipping Krishna, and that person is having some desire of romantic conjugal connection with Krishna, but it's not taken to the Raga mark, but it's just following Vaidhi and Vaidhi. So it's a particular case because it's only following Vaidhi, but wants to have a romantic life with God, which is not possible in Vaikuntha, in the Vaidhi mark, official Vaidhi mark. So what will happen to such a person, say Rupa Goswami? That person will attain a position similar to the queens in Dwarka, acquiring what sometimes is called samanjasarati, which is inhibited affection, in contrast with the samartharati of the gopis, which is full competent affection. So you see, from a mixture of Vaidhi and a desire which generally corresponds with Rag, But in this case, you are not putting rag. Well, some particular result will be there. You may end in Dwarka as a queen. And of course, again, this is not the goal of our practice, but Rupa Goswami mentions this to show about the importance of knowing how to combine all the things properly. Because if you are not willing to put raga, to put bite in the beginning and just want to have rag and you don't have it, you may end up as being a sahaja. And if you just get overtly attached to Vaidhi, you may end up of Vaikuntha or in Dwarka. And if you're a Sahaja, you may end up in Patala Lok, baby. So those are not our destinies, nor Patala Lok, nor Vaikuntha, nor Dwarka, and Braj. So how to enter into that specific, unique entry point, we need to be really aware of how to make this proper mixture. So till now, we are analyzing the role in Shastra in Vaidhi and Raga. Till now, we spoke a little bit about the role in Shastra in Vaidhi. So let's go for a minute to the role, scriptural role in Raga Bhakti. When here to say Raga Bhakti is not dependent on scripture again, there is some point trying to be made there. Because actually, strictly speaking, Raga Nuga Bhakti has all regard for scripture. It has faith in Shastra, but the point is, it's not driven by faith in scriptural statements that inform, for example, us that through bhakti you can attain freedom from birth and death. That's the faith in Shastra that will have a Vaidhi Bhakta. But the Raga Bhakta, her faith won't be driven by such mandates from Shastra, like you should always remember Vishnu, you should never forget him. It's not driven by what one should or should not do. It's driven by a thirst to attain prem, like that of the Brajavasis. At least to some degree, again, in the beginning you may just appreciate the ideal. That's something, but we should increase this more and more. Guru Maharaj once gave the nice example mentioned was like Vaidhi Bhakti is like caring for someone else's child, to do babysitting. And he said, Raganuga Bhakti will mean like caring for one's own child. But he concludes saying, in either case, you should learn how to do it, how to care for the child. But the motivation will be different. Externally, it seems the same. Internally, it's very different. In the first case, you are motivated by some separate idea. I want to obtain this, that. The other one is much more intimate, directly, passionate, and so on. So the point here is that Raganuga Sadhaka will also study Shastra, certain Shastra from certain perspective, and we'll have full regard for Shastra, but from a certain vantage point, from a certain angle. Interestingly, also here, as you remember, Vishwanath quotes a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to make his point, and in the commentary to this verse, both Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the two of them, commend this verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu quoted here by Vishwanath. They mention that even though those Raga Bhaktas develop some disregard for Shastra, again, which type of disregard for which type of Shastra or for which type of statement, but even though they develop that regarding Shastra and Yukti, they make now a point regarding Yukti, logic. They say in their commentary, logic is certainly employed, and greed does not always include disregard for scriptural injunctions. And logic, as a necessary component. So that's a point, clear point, I think. I mean, greed does not always include disregard for scriptural injunction or logic as a necessary component. That means in certain direction for certain statements and in certain levels of greed as well. Because to make the point they made is further is to make any sense of scripture, logic must be used to understand the meaning of any given statement, basically. As well, even to harmonize apparent contradictions in Shastra, you need to use logic, but a particular type of Shastra Yukti. So they conclude saying, one can develop greed without necessarily showing symptoms of disregard for rules of scripture and logic. So this should be considered mainly like a tatastha action, like a marginal quality that could be there, or could not be there. Not like the symptoms of bhav. You have the external symptoms, crying and trembling and whatever, horripilation. But some people can learn all those things in theater lesson. So there will be some other symptoms that will be always there in the bhava bhakta. Shantir, abhyartha kalatvam, that cannot be imitated on a period of time. So those will be Swarup Lakshan, the main attributes there. So in this way, the same way here, no? When we speak about Lobha, Raga Bhakti, this can be or cannot be. And of course, we can interpret this idea on another level if we are applying that to a very advanced Raga Bhaktas. For example, Raga Bhaktas who have gone transgressed, if you will, gone beyond some Brahma, like reverential attitude. And they are so immersed in their own emotional world that they are not concerned about following certain scriptures because their own emotion is driving them in certain directions. That's the emotion is in control. Their own swabhav, their own nature has become their scripture. We have the famous example of this Mataji, who was so much greedy to have darshan of Jagannath in Puri that she was walking over the shoulders of Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. Sri Chaitanya there was a sannyasi, and a lady was just stepping on his shoulders, but just to see Jagannath. So that's a perfect example. I mean, she's totally transgressing the proper decorum and what's expected from a lady in connection to a sannyasi in those times, in that place. But she did that, and the most important thing is how Mahaprabhu reacted to that. When one of Mahaprabhu's assistants wanted to stop that and actually stop and took the lady out, Mahaprabhu saw her and realized what happened. He was also immersed in his own bhav. And he said, oh, if I could only have such a level of attachment that I do not care for all these rules and concerns, because my swabhav has become a scripture. My taste is just driving me here and there. So the point is that this level of practitioners may not be following scripture. It's not because they do not want to do that, but because they cannot do that at some moments, because their bhav is driving them in one direction or another. But again, the general rule is that even those advanced devotees will follow all these things to give an example to others. But again, we may find some extreme examples here and there as well. So bear with me some more minutes. We are entering into the concluding section. I would like to share some more points if you allow me. So Rupa Goswami also mentions, interestingly, his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in connection to the points we're trying to make here. He speaks about the limit to how long a Vaidhi Bhakta should depend on scriptural rules. He says, how long a Vaidhi Bhakta should depend on scriptural rules? That will be till his achievement of Bhav. Why Bhav? Because at that stage in Bhav, he won't commit any more sins. Thus, he does not have to depend on scriptural injunctions that invoke fear regarding committing sin if you transgress Shastra. You follow? Constantly, the Vaidhi Bhakti on some level or another will be fearful of transgressing Shastra and engaging in sin. But when she arrives to Bhav, there's no longer that chance. So at that moment, the Vaidhi Bhakta is not depending, if you will, on scriptural rules any longer, in the sense we are explaining. But in the case of a Raga Bhakta, Rupa Goswami says, this is a different case. This won't happen in Bhav. He said, as soon as greed appears in a Raga Bhakta, and when here he says greed means greed proper, ruchi, basically. Ruchi in Raga Bhakti means before the Bhava of the Vaidhi Bhakta, that's the point. So at that point, when ruchi comes in a Raga Bhakta, then she won't depend on Shastric injunctions any longer, on this Vaidhi component and mixtured with Raga. So in this way, Rupa Goswami will conclude that Raga Bhakti is considered greatly superior. And as we mentioned, its correspondent Lobha, the Lobha, full Lobha, proper greed on the Raga mark, is considered sometimes as more extraordinary than the Bhav of the Vaidhi Bhakta. And Vishwanath Chakravarti comments to that section, interestingly, he says, however, wherever that greed has appeared, such a glorious thing, extraordinary greed, it is to be understood that the person must have studied the scriptures in order to attain that greed. Again, so role of scripture is there. And he concludes by saying, it is also necessary to study the scriptures in order to understand the proper sadhana for Raganuga Bhakti. First, you need to understand, to study scripture to get the sambandha of Raga Bhakti, to get the orientation of what's Raga Bhakti, to inform, educate yourself about Raga Bhakti. Then you need scripture to nourish your engagement in that practice. Of course, eventually you reach the goal. In that sense, you need no scripture, because scripture is fully alive in your own ruchi, taste. But Vishwanath is making this point very clear here. If greed is there in someone, you must understand that this scriptural study was there. Again, particular type of scripture, particular type of study. So we shouldn't be lazy, as Raga Bhakti is not an excuse to be shastrically lazy. Siddhanta valiya chitta nakara las iha haite Krishna lage sudrida manas, say Krishna Das Kaviraj. He says, you should siddhanta valiya chitta, you should consider over and over again the siddhanta, which means scriptural study. Nakara las, he said, do not be lazy. He knows we are lazy, so he's just saying that, as when Krishna saying to Arjuna, Sarva dharmam paritaja mamekam sharanam brajat, and so on. He's saying, Masucha, do not fear. So he's saying, do not fear, because he knows we are trembling, because he knows we are fearful. So he's anticipating our reaction. So here Krishna does the same. Nakarala, don't be lazy, because he knows we may have the tendency regarding going through this study. But which will be the fruit of that study, particular scripture study? Ihaite Krishna lagis sudrida manash. Krishna will be fully established in our mind, which has to do a lot with Raganuga Bhakti, with mental absorption, particular seva in that realm. So the point here is that we need to be educated. We need to be initiated into all that Raga Marga represents, and scriptural studies, it's a must in that regard. Because, I mean, we are part of Raganuga Bhakti, and we have been initiated into Raganuga Bhakti, but we have to understand what's that initiation. Not necessarily means Siddha Pranali, Ekadasa Bhava, and so on. That's an option in certain lineages. We are not condemning that. There's a way to approach that properly as well. That's another whole topic. But real and substantial initiation in Raganuga Bhakti, what's implication of that? Actually, that implies to be initiated into the concept of, let's say, divine slavery, which is the prevalent psychology of Braj. And we need to imbibe those ideas with proper scriptural guidance. Because whatever aspiration we may have in that direction that is not sustained, founded on that concept, which we have to study in great detail, whatever aspiration you have, which is not based on this concept of divine slavery, won't have any practical application in the pastimes of Krishna and Braj. You may have the idea, you can imagine so many things, but that will be only a mental issue, science fiction. You won't be able to practically apply that in the lila. In other words, you won't be able to enter that there if you are not properly acquainted with this psychology. So some final words on greed before finishing. So as the present verse is also saying, one more point that is important that I would like to mention is the qualification for threading the path of the Raga mark is not being actually qualified or purified, being pure on a certain level or being whatever, celibate or some other adhikars that may be here and there, but actually having some greed due to sadhu sangha for the path. So that's a qualification, basically, to have a greed for the path. So I will share a very brief example similar to an example that will be given in verse 7 in our next lecture, but it will help here as well. So we'll repeat it 2 times with different ingredients. Now I will give you the example of rasagula, and Vishwanath will give the example of milk, which is somehow connected. So to illustrate the idea, which I think you already got it. If you are walking into Loi Bazaar or whatever, and you saw a sweet market, sweet shop, and you see rasagula, this is a sweet, and you desire, I have to obtain that. You develop some greed. supposedly some greed, but maybe you look at your pocket and you realize, oh, I don't have any money. I cannot acquire it. So it's over. So if you conclude like that, the conclusion is you have no greed. You follow? Because you may say, I have no money. Following these ideas, I have no qualification for treading the path of Raga Bhakti. Oh, I saw that, it's very nice, but I see myself, I'm so falling, I'm so impure, so this is not for me. That means you are not qualified for the path of Raga, because you think that in order to tread that, you need some specific purity or whatever that actually will come as a byproduct of the greed, initial greed that will come on some level. So if you see the Rasagula and you say, I have no money, I have no qualification, basically, I have no adhikar, I won't buy it, that's not greed. Greed means the person decides, I must have that Rasagula. With money, without money, by begging, by taking a loan, by stealing, grace, that will be greed. That's the point. And that's the adhikar here. No matter how fallen you are, you want that. Oh, that's adhikar for Raga Bhakti, on some level or another again. So in similar way, if someone is hearing about the love of the Brajavasis, but you feel, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm so low, and this is such a high thing, so I will never be able to have such a thing, that's not greed. That's not greed. Better you go to the Vaidhi Mars Sampradaya or somewhere else. Or better you go to a Raga Marg sadhu and understand this properly. Greed means maybe I'm a fool, maybe I'm a rascal, most probably in my case at least. But even though I must have that somehow or other, I must obtain that, as Guru Maharaj translate this, that how is that Vijnanartam Sagurumeva Bigachet. Svetashvatara Upanishad said, you must have a guru. This must is not an artificial imposition, but something that comes from, I must have that, no matter what. So that's, so somehow or other I have to obtain this. Maybe even though I'm the most falling of the most falling, at the same time, I feel that I must obtain it. I want it. That's greed, basically. Rupa and Sanatan, they introduced themselves to Mahaprabhu in that way, very humbly. Very humbly, that's important point to mention here. Not to have divine, this type of greed is not a proud thing. Pride, you have to be really humble. When they presented to Mahaprabhu, they say, apanya jogya dheki manipam kshobha tatapi tumar gune upajaya lobha. Lobha. So they say, although we see we are unworthy, our mind is still greedy for your attributes. So this is an important point. Here there is greed, but here is proper humility. It's not that I'm greedy and I deserve that. No, I realize I do not deserve that. I realize I'm totally unworthy and fallen, but still I'm greedy for that. That's the proper combination. It's not, I'm so fallen, that's so high, it's not for me. That's not the equation. It's not either I'm greedy for that and I'm so qualified and I deserve that. That's not the proper combination, but the exact proper combination is shown here by Rupa and Sanatan, falling at the feet of Mahaprabhu. I see I'm unworthy. I'm entering to full detail of my level of unworthiness, but at the same time, I'm also seeing the level of your mercy, and I'm greedy for those attributes. That mercy is so charming that I have a lobha in that direction. So in that case, following with the example, the Rasagula example, just finishing, the person who has some greed will continue her practice. We are speaking now about the Ajata Ruchi Raga Sadhaka. The devotee is not leaving the practice, it's following the practice, even though she has not the lobha fully. It's following the regulated principles, but motivated mainly by greed, by attaining that. Like again, the person that say, I want to Rasagula, maybe didn't have the money, but the person will hear, okay, you may get a cow. And if you get a cow, you can obtain milk. And so the person will say, okay, I will get a cow. So it starts to do all the necessary things in order to finally get to that point, converging point of having the Rasagula. And he will be engaged in so many things that it seems, what's the connection between buying a cow and eating a Rasagula? Or there's a connection if you have the proper orientation. So the person, and there are so many stages in between. It's not just having the cow. You have to feed the cow, take care of the cow, milk the cow, make the milk ready, put it in the fire, boil it, take out certain issues, make the proper substance, put the sugar, blah, blah, blah. Finally, you have rasagula. Finally, you get to your prayojan tattva. No? So many things are being done in the between that seem disconnected and seems like you are following a certain process and regulation. But all this is with the idea in mind, I must have this rasagula. All that's a justification for all the things. So in the same way, we should embrace our practice, jata ruchi sadhana, with that perspective. So that's the idea, no? If that person has greed, we'll continue with the process. The same process that a devotee in Vaidhi Bhakti is following, externally speaking, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasin Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam, Ata Guru Padashraya, Sri Krishna Dikshadi, Sikshanam, and so on. All this is applicable to Vaidhi Bhakti. But the Raga Bhakti is not following this with the idea of scriptures say that I have to do this, and that's why I'm doing that. But actually the idea is, finally, through this, I will be able to obtain what I'm hungering, what I'm eager for. Eagerness, important word in the Raga Bhakti school, in our Raga Bhakti vocabulary. But again, this eagerness or this greed shouldn't be superficial, shouldn't be imitational, shouldn't be proud, again, but will come naturally more and more after we have purified ourselves through the practice itself. So we also should be, as a conclusion, just be very careful about having the proper attitude, proper approach to all this, because if not, we may engage in sahajism, as we say, taking things very cheaply, to be a cheap lover. Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say that if you have the tendency to go upwards without qualification, you will fall. But if you have the proper attitude and you have the tendency to go downwards, culturing what he will say call the negative side, you will go upwards, even though it sounds contradictory. If you want to go to establish yourself as a positive, you will remain negative. But if you enter into the negative side, you will get positive polarities. He will say, fools rush where angels first to fear to tread. So we shouldn't rush in an uninformed way into the realm of Raga Bhakti. We should properly educate ourselves about what's this. This is how Mahaprabhu himself deal with all these things. He didn't speak Lila Katha openly to everyone. He has a very intimate circle of 4 main devotees with whom he spoke Rasa Katha. So we should go through Gaur Lila, basically. That's my point. If you want to enter to Krishna Lila, following this type of examples, standards. As the famous saying says, first work, then samadhi. So first buy the cow, do all the stuff, then rasagula. That's the idea. First do the needful in order to attain further qualification for making your greed more and more sustainable. So again, first work, then samadhi. Of course, which type of work? And then samadhi, but how long? How much then? No? Of course, the process is gradual, but again, we have to know how to balance these two things, like eagerness and regulation and gradual stuff. The process is gradual, pada, as they say, step by step, but also it's as gradual as we want to make it. I mean, because you can also make the process too gradual, and that's not the idea. Some eagerness should be there, even more and more. But again, not too much in the sense that it becomes sahaja, it becomes superficial. Slow but pace win the race. Sridhar Maharaj will also quote. No? So as much as we gain good pace, our marching will be quicker and quicker. So we have to combine these two elements in a very intelligent, mature way. Our patience, we should be patient, and our eagerness. The two of them. The classical example is the pregnant mother. And she's pregnant, so she will like to be with her son immediately, her child, but she has to wait for 9 months at least. So in the beginning, she knows that there is some patience, there is some eagerness in the beginning, but there's mainly some patience. But eventually, as the months are passing, the mother having more eagerness, but she cannot just open her stomach, her belly, and take the child after 4 months. She has to wait. But as the waiting is coming, the patient is winning over, if you will. So we should understand how to, we are trying, in this case, maybe the analogy, we are not trying to give birth to something, but we are trying to get out of the womb of material nature. But it's a similar idea. We should progress in our bhajan, and we should understand that progress in our bhajan means to increase the degree of our eagerness, but in a sustainable and realistic way at the same time. Because sometimes we go to black and white, and we say from the very beginning of the talk, here we are trying to give some nuanced, in between middle path perspective. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta himself will say it. Mainly I'm speaking about an 80% of my discourse is about what Raga Bhakti is not. And a 20% of my discourse is about what Raga Bhakti is. But again, he said that on a particular point to a particular audience, but as we progress gradually, the idea is that that equation, that proportion will be changing as we advance. And we will be more qualified to hear more directly about this, to culture this more directly. Because again, the whole goal of the practice, as Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta will put it, is not only an artha nibriti, to get rid of the negative stuff, but artha pravriti, to accomplish the ultimate positive good. So Raga Bhakti is all about that. So some words I wanted to share today with all of you regarding this 5th verse and the whole concept of Ajata Ruchi Raga Bhakti and how this plays out in relation to scriptures and in relation to our qualification or lack of that. But even though in the next class, next Thursday, we will continue giving, in the next verses, there will be further clarifications regarding these points. So this is not all, but I think it's enough for today. But I don't know if you have any questions. We may spend some remaining minutes in that sense.
Maharaj, I have a small question.
Yes.
I think it's small. Regarding Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's logo, I'm trying to get the picture back.
Were you able to see the picture?
Sorry?
Were you able to see the picture?
Yeah. I can't see it right now, but it doesn't matter. I know what I want to ask. On the right side, on the Rag side, you mentioned the scripture is scriptures like the Bhagavad. So I don't know if I just missed it. Maybe you said it and I missed it, but I'm wondering, what is the scripture on the Vaidhi side?
Well, there's more Pancharatric, like ritualistic, like the Narad Pancharatra, like this, which are mainly some literatures which are more connected with rituals, basically, with different rules and prescriptions about how to engage in puja and different types of rituals, because Vaidhi Bhakti is mainly the domain of ritual. So there are what they call Pancharatric Shastra. And on the other side, we have the Bhagavad.
Okay. I guess I'm still wondering, are those scriptures a significant part of the Rag path the beginning?
Which scriptures?
The Vaidhi scriptures, the Pancharatrika.
Not necessarily. I mean, of course, they are there and they are used in certain contexts, in the context again of ritual and puja, but I wouldn't consider them like a substantial part of our tradition, because from day one we received this idea of the Bhagavad being Grantaraj from tip to toe. But we can approach the Bhagavad on different degrees again, and the Bhagavad itself is presenting a certain sequence. No, it's not just, it's building up on the 10th canto. So the Bhagavad itself is giving some vidhi, as I quoted last class, a verse of the Bhagavad which mentions this idea of vidhi. If you want to get free from the fear of death, you should worship Bhagavan. But there are other scriptures that will be mainly more prominent in the Sri Sampradaya and the Vaidhi Marga Sampradayas, like these Pancharatra scriptures, like Vishnu Purana. On other scripture will make the main emphasis on Vishnu, again, not so much on Krishna. So they are not so much for us, but in the context of ritual, some of those sections are there. But again, our path is not archan, but bhajan, which has to do not so much with, our ultimate worship is not so much a ritual one, but as we mentioned, the distance between the deity and ourselves will be bridged as we advance into in intimacy, basically.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to understand. It's curious to me that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta included both those things in his logo. I'm not expressing this very well. It's not that I wonder why he did that, but I thought that he was, from what you said, maybe I've misunderstood, that we're balancing the Vaidhi with the Rag initially until we get to the point over time, gradually, that Rag increases.
Yeah.
So if that type of scripture isn't so relevant, except for maybe the rules for Archan, I'm just trying to understand, the purpose of this logo.
Again, those scriptures, they are mainly used in the context of Archan, but it has to do with a Vaidhi orientation. That's the point he wants to make, Vaidhi orientation, which it's not only limited to Archan, but Archan is a prominent feature in Vaidhi orientation and the Vaidhi conception. When you are worshiping, there is the worshipped, there is some distance between the two, there is Bhagavan. So still that awareness is there, which characterizes the Vaidhi spirit. So he was trying to make that point by including Lakshmi Narayan, by including these scriptures. Not that he's promoting, let's go there or let's go deep into those shastras, but all those things. My point is, for example, he put Lakshmi Narayan. You won't see that Bhaktisiddhanta installed Lakshmi Narayan deities anywhere.
No.
So he saw Radha Krishna always, everywhere. So my point is, what's the role of Lakshmi Narayan? He's not promoting that, but he's implying, the spirit of the logo is implying, in the beginning, again, as Prabhupada will say, instead of worshiping Radha and Krishna, you are worshiping Lakshmi Narayan in the sense that you are not having the full spirit of a Brajavasi to approach Radha Krishna as the Brajavasis do. So that will be closer to the Lakshmi Narayan spirit in the sense of Aishwarya, awareness, they are God. And we need, most of us, to go through that first stage, but not again worshiping Lakshmi Narayan directly, but worshiping Radha and Krishna, but with certain Vaidhi ingredient, as I explained here, because we don't have full lobha to jump into the forest, if you will, and relate to Radha and Krishna, as Sanatana Goswami will say to Madan Mohan, just eat this bread, and if Madan Mohan says it has no salt, it has no salt. That's what I have. If you like, nice. If not, look somewhere else a place to be. If we do not imitate that now, we will engage in seva aparat. So we need to perform certain rules, but in a context that we will get purified and get certain insight that, again, the distance will be bridged, and someday we may say to the deity, I have no salt, what to do? But now we have to be aware of having salt, of course. All the ingredients have to be there. So all these Pancharatrika scriptures have to do with paying certain attention to these externals, because still we are on a certain external approach yet. So we have to take care of that, and gradually that will take us more and more inwardly. So basically that's the point he wants to make. And maybe one could say, I don't know, we should do some research, but also according to the social times of that time, of the moment, he may try to as he tried to mix some Varna ashram considerations with his presentation, Sannyas ashram and Upavita, sacred thread, trying to include Gaudiya Vaishnavism in a particular context. Maybe that half of the logo also was having some function in that connection, apart from what we are telling. But I think the main point is is what we present.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I understand it more
Okay,
fully.
thank you. Any other question?
I have a question, Maharaj,
Okay.
but I think that I almost know what is the direction of the answer, but not really sure about what would be the details of.
Okay, let's see.
We can say, because I'm not sure, for example, about what is the kind of sadhana that a practitioner that is, for example, in Nitya Navadvip is doing. And so I'm not sure about this. The question would be something like that. The practitioner that see her sadhana will take her to satisfy her great spontaneous love for Radha Krishna. In this sense, something that you said at the final part is that the sadhana is like a medium, not an end in itself.
No.
And
when I say that, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Sadhana is sadhana is a means, but eventually it becomes a goal in itself.
Yeah, this is what I don't have clear.
Sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti, but bhakti is always there from beginning to end. Maybe you misunderstood some part, but I never say that sadhana, like we do something as a sadhana and eventually when we get to the goal, we reject that sadhana, so we attain our goal. That happens in other practices, in jnana and karma. They embrace some practice, some process, even bhakti, in order to attain their desired goal. But when they attain mukti or whatever, they reject all those things. For example, someone may perform extreme austerities to be born in Swargalok as a demigod.
Yeah.
And they deprive themselves of so much pleasures, but when they arrive to Swargalok, they enjoy so much. So they embrace a path, they reject that, and they attain their goal. But for us, and that shows how bhakti is the supreme sadhana, means, because if bhakti is not supreme, means you practice bhakti and eventually, if after practicing bhakti, you get to the goal of bhakti and that goal is different from the practice, it means that goal is something is superior to whatever that may be the goal. But for us, the goal of bhakti is bhakti. No? Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, says the Bhagavad. Bhakti comes from bhakti and bhakti begets further bhakti. And that's why the different stages in bhakti has been called in this way: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. But the word bhakti is always there. It's only,
My question is about sadhana. For example, I don't understand really. For example, you will not find somebody chanting Mahamantra. I'm not sure. This is only that I don't know. You will not find. I think that you will not find somebody in Vrindavan or in Braj chanting Mahamantra in a external way that as we are, or maybe in Nitya Navadvip, we will do that, or somebody that is there.
Well, that's a whole other topic in one sense. But yesterday Guru Maharaj answered the first part of the question. Someone asked him if someone was chanting japa in Braj, and he explained that in Braj, in particular in Vrindavan, they are not chanting japa as we are chanting here, because they are relating to Nam in the form of Rupa, Guna, Lila. No? The Nam is no different from the form of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna. And in Vrindavan, all the devotees are fully serving Krishna personally in the Lila. So Nam, Srila Maharaj will say, is there in the background, like a soundtrack is a foundational underlying principle, but externally, overtly, they are not executing sadhana as we are doing here, because that's a land of siddhas. That's a particular mood there. But when you go to Nitya Navadvip, that's a different thing. Nitya Navadvip sometimes is called sadhana siddha bhumi, which means the land where perfected beings, those in Vrindavan, are acting as sadhakas, as practitioners, but as perfected practitioners. So they are chanting there. If you study like the ongoing eternal dynamics of Astakaliya Lila in Navadvip, there are chanting Harinam and so on. That's there, but again, it's not sadhana. It seems they are doing sadhana, but they already siddhas. They are reached perfection, but they are in the mood of being a devotee because their Krishna is in the mood of being a devotee, Mahaprabhu. But it's not that, it's not the same as us. We are practicing sadhana and we are in the stage called sadhana bhakti. It's not that we are in prem bhakti, siddha bhakti, and we are doing that because of the name, the dynamics of the lila. We need to do that in order to get closer to the lila. So that's the difference, no? I don't know if that helps answer the questions. Or,
Yeah.
yes? Okay. So I think we can finish here. It's already more than an hour and a half, and it's already lots of content to digest. So thank you very much to all of you for your time. Next class, Thursday, we will continue unfolding some of these topics. So try to give time for that. It's important to digest all this. So anyway, we will be uploading the talk also today or tomorrow. So if you would like to hear it again during these days to grasping more and more these topics, it will be there in Sabda Brahman or also in one podcast site that we always share there in the group. So thank you very much to all of you. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Raga-vartma-candrika ki jai, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad ki jai, Gaur Bhaktavrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand Haribo, Vanchakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nanta Koti Vaishnava Brinda ki jai, Gaur Haribo.